when you are a tiny little state, you need a lot more people to have critical thinking. And IPS was one of those rare few institutions where critical thinking was actually sanctioned. Mr. Goh Chok Tong declared publicly he wanted a more consultative government. And IPS was a place where people who are deeply concerned about major issues of Singapore could come together and have that kind of discussion. And Prof. Tomiko added another word. It's not only frank and robust, but a collegial discussion. Because at the end of the day, it is not that just to criticize the government, but we must be critical. And one of the terms that Prof. Koh often uses is we must be loving critics. And IPS was one of those rare few institutions where critical thinking was actually sanctioned. So I felt that this idea is good, and we should, take it at face value. Because of my media interest and experience and knowledge, I told Prof. Koh and Dr. Lee, why don't we do more work on media policies? By 1994-95, internet was very much in play, and I also felt that is an area which because it's so new, it is so under-researched, that I should actually pay attention to that. I wrote my pieces based on the dilemmas of developing an intelligent island. Year in Review was the flagship conference of IPS in those days. They will look at the past for much of that day. Whatever happened will be summarized for people to understand. Then there was one segment where we looked to the future, moving towards 2000. Prof. Koh himself said that we should look forward rather than backward. We did a very special edition for year 2000. After that, it was Singapore Perspectives, which is more to look to the coming year, because our conference is in January, whereas under Mr. Janadas Devan depended on what may be topical in some ways, but also conceptually or philosophically very interesting ones. Originally, there was a program which was called the CEO Seminar, where IPS conducted a two-day seminar for the corporate chiefs, but only who are Singapore citizens. When we set up the corporate associate scheme, we felt that if we exclude the non-Singaporeans, you are excluding the single most important sector of the economy, which are the MNCs. When I wrote the paper for the CA, I made it very clear this is not just a cash cow. It is not just for the money we are bringing them in, but please emphasize the fact that they are an intellectual resource for IPS. They shared with us what are important, grave concerns that they had. In the first 20 years, we often did not publish what we researched on. But on some occasions, we have done both very routine things and some truly remarkable things. There are few publications where I think we demonstrated the level of independence, which is always questioned, that IPS has enjoyed. The first one is called the IFER report. This is the IPS Economic Forum report. So we finally completed the reports, and we went to present together with Prof. Koh to the two DPMs, Mr. Lee and Dr. Tan. It was quite a nerve-wracking session because many of our recommendations were quite different from what finally we discovered was his committee's reports. Our original intent was to just present it to the government, but Prof. Ko asked, can we publish it? Mr. Lee readily agreed. He said, publish it. And in fact, publish it before my report comes out. So I'm mentioning this as a demonstration of the spirit of Mr. Lee Hsien Loong as well as the spirit of IPS, that we could publish something contrarian and live to tell the story. There is another even more interesting publication which is on Mr. Goh himself. After he stepped down, Prof. Ko decided that we should do a book on Goh Chok Tong administration. The only person who kept telling me and Tan Hao, go ahead and publish, was Professor Tommy Koh. And to the great credit of Mr. Goh Chok Tong's office, they did not interfere. So that book stands testimony to the independence of IPS.